Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're going to do our 9th installment, if you can believe that, of answering your questions. And we're going to go ahead and just jump on into Carl Siemens' question, who said that I have mentioned a primitive sentient race that the GN eat, and do I think that the universe would consider it an illegal activity to fill the holding cells of your ship with them? Yes. I do think that that's going to end up being considered an illegal activity in most parts of space. Now, if you're lucky enough to get into GN space, chances are they're not going to consider it illegal since it's a delicacy to them. But if you're within UEE space or maybe the Banu or most other people are probably going to frown upon eating a sentient race. That's probably just how it's going to be. That being said, I think you're still going to be able to do it. You know, you're going to need to be able to use smuggling techniques or, like smuggler's holds where scanning is tougher. Or you could just try and avoid being scanned in general. So there's going to be ways to do it. The question is just how. Then you go on to also ask if I would be willing to do it and risk them going Planet of the Apes in your ship. I think I probably would. Now, I'm not going to be doing that on my main character, my STLYoungblood character, because reputation does have reputation system in the game is going to have an impact on how easy your life is. That being said, I do plan on having a secondary character as, to kind of be able to show the darker side of the game, whether that be smuggling or slave trading or piracy or whatever, because I want to be able to demonstrate all aspects of the game. That's actually one of my Patreon goals right now, is at a certain tier, then I'm going to go ahead and start committing to be playing on both accounts so we can get to see both sides of the gameplay. But I think that's going to be something that's going to really kill your reputation if you're trying to maintain a good one and you're caught with a bunch of people that you're going to sell to be eaten. That probably would be a big thumbs down. The hoodie says user.cfg. I do not have a custom configuration file. So if you're wanting to see specifics about like some of my settings or anything like that, I can share those with you. But there's a lot of people that have gone in and updated, like manually updated their user.cfg. I haven't done that. Mine's just stock with whatever the game's actually provided. I've been lucky enough to have pretty good performance as it is, so I'm not really tweaking anything at this time. Patrick Williams says, if a pirate pulls you out of quantum travel, will your escorts stop with you or will they keep going? I don't envision them being able to stop with you just automatically. But I think that's going to be, we kind of just need to wait and see on that because we don't know what the mechanic is to actually pull someone out of quantum travel. So if it's like, I'm going to pinpoint one person with like a laser beam that's going to disrupt their quantum gravity field that's going to knock them out, then you might be able to pinpoint one. But if all of a sudden you just generate this weird gravity well that ends up knocking everybody out, then yes, everybody would probably stop together. The problem is we don't know how they're planning on implementing the interdiction piece right at this point. I can tell you from Elite Dangerous what happens is only one person ends up getting pulled out of Super Cruise, but anybody else that's in that wing can tell, like gets in a little alert that your person is being interdicted and they can kind of turn around and come and help out. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like that, but until we know more about the interdiction piece and we know how they're actually going to, implement pulling somebody out of that or preventing them from going into quantum, it's a hard question to answer. But my guess would be no, it's not going to pull everybody at once. Django says, do you think search and rescue will be a profitable role in Star Citizen? If so, what ships do you think could be retrofitted in a search and rescue / mini hospital other than the Cutlass Red? I honestly don't know if this is going to be a profitable option in Star Citizen. I think they're trying to make every piece of gameplay so it could be profitable, so people are encouraged to test everything out. Excuse me. But I think it's going to be at least okay. When we start talking about, return on investment, there's not really any investment in search and rescue. You're outside of your fuel, you're just going in, and if you see somebody that needs help, you provide that help. You haven't really expended any money. So there's a higher profit off of, your investment. Now, that being said, if so, what ships do you think could be retrofitted? And Cutlass Red's the obvious one. I think when we take a look at some of the other ships out there, you need to be able to fit, like that ejection pod into the ship somehow. Now, not necessarily. Somebody could just bail out and be floating there. But if you look at like the Constellations and, the Freelancers and a couple of the other ships, they have those like actual like cases that get launched out of the ship. And I think that's going to be a prerequisite to being able to actually do really well with search and rescue. So I think things that have bigger doors on them, like a Freelancer, could probably be okay at that. Other than that, though, most of the fighters that we have right now are going to be no's. I mean, it's probably going to be transport type ships. I think a Caterpillar could probably do pretty well at it. Maybe a Banu Merchantman. An Endeavor could probably handle it on its own to some extent. I think anything that's big enough to really fit one of those ejection pods into the ship could end up doing it. But the Freelancer to me is the one that kind of screams as being a higher probability. Bradley Moore says, do you think that there's going to be in-game voice chat? Yes, there is absolutely going to be in-game voice chat. The question that I have about voice chat is, what do they do to make me want to use it? Because right now we've got Mumble, we've got Ventrilo, we've got TeamSpeak. There's a lot of options out there. Now we have Discord. And with all of those, if there's things in game that make things immersive, for example, I don't know, electronic warfare knocks out your communications, that sounds like fun. But here's the deal. If you're trying to be really successful, like in a group or as an organization, if your communications go down, that sucks. So if you have the alternative of using a third-person option that prevents that from happening, most people are going to do that. And then you're on an uneven playing field. So I'm really interested to see what they do with the voice chat, because there's already really good options outside of the in-game solution. So what's the benefit? And I think what it probably ends up needing to be is the way that I think I would be more willing to use it, if there was easy ways to talk to different groups of people. So like if I'm running an operation, I can talk to, my interceptors and my bombers and my blah, blah, blah. So there's an easy way to kind of break it up into squads. And then also when I'm looking at like a mini map, or if like somebody pops up and I get a little heads up display icon that somebody's talking, I want an arrow or something that's pointing me to the direction of where that person's at. Those are the types of things that would make it more valuable and worth the risk of having a problem with, electronic warfare, to where I wouldn't mind actually using that over something that's not impacted by in-game behavior. Robert Delvicio says, what are your predictions for the new Corvette in terms of price, manufacturer, features, etc.? Also, do you think there will be a limited quantity? I am torn on whether this is going to be a limited ship or not. And I think some of that's going to depend on what the armament ends up being, what the size ends up being. I think what we can say is that it's probably going to be safely smaller than an Idris, because an Idris grew and became a frigate. It was a Corvette. So hell, I don't know, somewhere smaller than an Idris. As far as manufacturer goes, if it's really militarily focused, I would say it's got to be Anvil or Aegis. I mean, those are really the only two options. We have more Aegis capital ships at the moment, so seeing a Anvil would be a nice change of pace. Almost like a bigger version to the Carrack and more armed, I think would be nice. As far as price goes, when we start talking about, the Javelin was $2,500. The Idris was, I think, $1,200. I don't think this is going to follow that same trend where all of a sudden we're dropping down to, $400. I think it's probably going to be $700, $800, I would guess. But again, it all comes down to size, capability, armament, all that type of stuff. As far as features go, God, I don't know. I would say really nice sensor arrays. You've got the Javelin, which is just a total badass, covered in guns type of ship. You've got the Idris, which has the gigantic railgun on it, as long as a hangar. I could maybe see it holding one or two ships on the Corvette, but probably not big ones. And in addition, I think it'll probably have, some pretty good weaponry kind of covering it. But I think it's going to probably play another role where it's got more of like a sensor suite, or maybe some sort of deterrent. Like, I think there's going to be something of that effect that's going to give it some value. But I'm excited to see. The Flea 1987 says, being more of a solo player with a Retaliator, I'd like to use it as a VIP escort, a secure hauler of very valuable goods, troop transport, etc. I wouldn't use NPC to man my guns, but the AI system that CIG has talked about in the past. Afraid that I might not be able to utilize the full potential of the Retaliator, do you think it would be wise to melt it for the Freelancer, Warden, or Redeemer? You already have a 350 and a Saber. Thank you and love you. Oh, well, thank you. Love you too, Flea. Okay, so with the Retaliator, my problem with it is, and this is the one that's always been my problem, is there's not really any forward-facing weaponry. Sure, you've got some turrets on the front that can point forwards, but their placement isn't really that great. I think the idea of the turrets on the Retaliator is to keep people away from your ship so you can deliver your payload, not necessarily to engage something that's in front of you. So for me, when I say, you're starting to talk about like this AI system that they've talked about, or maybe being able to slave the turrets to your, pilot stick, I don't see it being that effective. So if you're talking about something that's versatile, yeah, I mean, it could carry troops. It's got the living quarters, it's got the cargo quarters, it's got the dropship quarters. I mean, I love the Retaliator, don't get me wrong, but my beef with it is that forward-facing weaponry piece. So if you're talking about being able to really utilize it with just you as yourself and no AI crew or no real people playing, I don't think you're going to be able to utilize it to its full potential. I think you're going to be selling it short, and you're going to be kind of limited to what you can do with it now. So if I'm suggesting whether you melt it for a freelancer, warden, or redeemer, a VIP escort, it doesn't really scream any of those to me. I mean, the freelancer's got more comfortable seats. The redeemer has a lot of guns, so it would be a very secure hauler, but the redeemer doesn't carry a lot. Whereas the freelancer would do that well, but not necessarily be a troop transport. You see, so we're kind of getting into areas where the 3 ships that you're listing are combat focused, dropship focused, or cargo focused. I think based on the price range, so if you're talking about a Retaliator and you're talking about a Redeemer and a Warden, we're talking about ships that are in that $250 price range. I would probably suggest the Constellation Andromeda is going to fit most of those pretty well, and is going to be one of the more versatile ships in the universe. So that would be my recommendation, even though you didn't list it there. If hauling goods is more important than the others, then I would say Freelancer would be my second choice there. Simon Alls says, I have a question about a potential 3-part. Suppose you lose your only ship early in your Star Citizen career, like the first day, and like a total chump, you have no insurance. Well, that was a mistake. You're not really good at anything yet, so how long do you think you would need to work at other ships and doing jobs for people to acquire a new ship for yourself? Well, every ship comes with a little bit of insurance, so hopefully by the time that runs out, you've been able to actually secure insurance by completing jobs. But I don't know. I've heard the number that I keep going back to is it takes 7 days to earn a freelancer, or a constellation, I mean. So does that mean 7 days of in-game playing, 7 days of average player playing? Has that number changed? I don't know. But I think it probably wouldn't take you long to get something like an Aurora or a Mustang Alpha, or maybe even just a Merlin. I think that would happen relatively quickly. But don't let your insurance come up. I think they're going to have it set so you can automatically renew. I think it's going to be stupid cheap. So letting your insurance expire is going to be bad. You also say, will anyone ever even want to hire you with virtually no experience? There's always going to be somebody that can hire you, especially if you're just being nice and trying to help. Worst case scenario, you could just take a job at a lower price to just build your reputation to then help you get along a little bit further. Said not a likely scenario, but it is an interesting consideration. It is. I think it's just a lesson right there, because it could be really terrible to lose a ship because you didn't have insurance. But there are various jobs that you can take on, and I think you could even probably hop on AI ships, and they'd probably be more likely to hire you than a real player. So it'll be interesting to see, but ultimately just be careful and don't let that happen. Gray's Gun says, hey, longtime fan, just curious. I'm a lead to a small organization that wants to grow. What is the best way to facilitate that? It's for us, it's been about culture. Our culture in PXP has been members have a good time first every time. That's our main goal. Now, to do that, you need to facilitate the right people and the right expectations. And if you have people that come in that aren't a good fit, they don't get to stay. And it may sound harsh, but if somebody's a total buzz killer, if somebody's really negative or is bossing other people around, like those types of things don't go well. And you need to be really sentient about the feeling in the organization, and take feedback from the organization. So if you want to really grow it, some of it's going to be finding a mouthpiece, whether that be somebody that can speak on your behalf. Maybe it's you've got a good message that you can relay through like the recruiting threads, being active in chat. There's different ways that you can do it, but one is you got to have the right environment to bring people in. You got to have a clear set of goals in what you want to do, and you got to also make sure that your message is getting out there somehow. So hopefully that helps you out. Hydra Strike says, what do you think would be one of the most profitable setups for $185, including the game package, so $170 of ships? I'm interested in what to see you think. I've been debating the options, and yeah, all I have right now is a Saber. So, $170, and we're talking about profit. I'm still, until I see otherwise, going to say that some cargo transport is going to be the most effective way to make money, because it seems like every game that has an economy and sales and transport is kind of an option, it's the way you make your money. So at $170, Constellation Taurus, maybe it's $150. It carries a boatload of cargo. You've probably got some decent upgrade paths from there. So I think that would be a really good option. If you want lower operating cost, I think at $140 is the Freelancer Max. I think that would be a really solid option as well. The Max also gives you a little bit more versatility, I believe, than the Constellation Taurus. Trying to do some math in my head. I think those two, as far as like cargo and transport, would probably be the best bet. You could also even potentially meet in the middle. If you're talking about melting your saber right now, you could end up doing something like a Cutlass at $100. And then it leaves you $70 overall to get another ship, in which case you could get like an Avenger. So then you've got a fighter and a kind of multi-purpose ship. So I would kind of look into that way, find something that can actually do cargo for you, and that'll kind of point you in the right direction, I think. Owl War Dog says, pity for your thoughts on landing gear. Seeing as the majority of ships have deployable feet or stands, I find the 300 series or Avengers wheeled landing gear to be quite an oddity. I thought perhaps this was an indication that ships were equipped like so to unable to VTOL in atmosphere, but assuming that was the rule for too many ships, I'm going to go ahead and just stop it there. As far as the landing gear goes, I personally don't really care because it's only there when you're landed. Most of the time I plan on being in the air in my ship. That being said, I know it bothers the heck out of some people. The Redeemer's landing gear pisses people off for some reason, and I agree, it looks a little weird on the ship, but it doesn't really bother me. I personally am like a fan of like the Freelancer style landing gear, or what I think we're going to see on the Starfare, which is just kind of like a rubberized like foot or like sled. And even the new Constellation has a really nice set of landing gear. So I prefer the look of non-wheeled. But in a way, it kind of makes sense because, having the wheels in, if you're going to spend some time in atmosphere, still makes sense. If you have the option of VTOLing up in your hangar and then flying to the edge, yeah, that sounds great, but you're probably also pushing paper and debris all over your freaking hangar. If you could just roll up to the edge and then take off, you're going to have a much neater environment. So I understand the idea behind it. I'm not surprised that it's different on all these different ships, but I think that's something worth pointing out. So I don't know if that answers your question in the slightest, but to me it doesn't really matter. My name is Jeff. Says, how will CIG make money once the PU has been released and the ability to pledge for ships is removed? There's going to be a couple different ways they can do this. I think they've said that they're going to do ongoing cosmetic sales. So like if you want a new skin for your ship, or you want a new maybe cool looking cockpit or something like that, things that don't impact performance cosmetically might end up being things that you can buy and kind of keep development going. Other things are going to be, when we're buying right now, is if you already have one of the pre-existing packages. You've got the Persistent Universe and you've got the campaign. Well, you've got the first chapter of the campaign. If they keep coming out with additional stories, chances are they're going to charge another $15, almost like DLC for those. I don't know exactly what their pricing scheme is, but there's going to be little things that you can purchase along the way that's going to continue to drive the game's economy a little bit. Doug Brady says, what is your current setup? Mouse and keyboard, HOTUS. I believe I saw a video where you compare the X52 to the X55 and you prefer the X52 Pro. Is that what you're still using? If so, any plans to make any changes to the CIG's peripherals once they come out? I'm using X52 Pro. I'm not making any plans right now to change. That might change, but for right now, I'm just so comfortable with the X52 Pro that I'm not planning on changing. And in addition, I had to send one back to get repaired, and I ended up getting some spare parts back. So I've got like redundancies now. I've got like 3 or 4 of them up in my closet. So I'm in a pretty good place with the X52 Pro. I'm intrigued by CIG's peripherals once they come out. But until I actually see a little bit more of them, and I maybe even get some reviews from other people that are using them, I'm not planning on jumping in. Unless there's maybe a huge demand or something like that, at which point I'd consider it. Travis Wood, 117, says, will they fix servers, as in when you want to play with a friend and it's nearly impossible to join a game because they throw you into the fullest servers? Yeah, it is a nightmare, and they're going to fix it. It's something that's pretty high on their priority list. Part of it is the instance size. That needs to expand pretty soon. And then they need to find a way to be able to let you kind of create like a private server. Not necessarily a private one, but at least start an instance from scratch so your friends have an ability to try and join you. So it's going to be fixed. It's something they're working on. It just isn't in place yet. So that's going to be it for now. I think this has gone on entirely too long. So stay tuned for another one of these here pretty soon. If you have your questions, get them in. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Take care.